morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay. So welcome everyone for joining us to this event organized today here in the framework of REDI4Heat project. We are now giving time to people to connect. In the meanwhile, I will present myself. So my name is Francesca Tamburrini, and I am EU Project Officer at the European Heat Pump Association. And today I'm very glad to be your host. As you can clearly see from the title of our events, today's protagonist will be the member states' national energy and climate plans. But before starting to deep dive into today's topic, just to warm up a little bit, I'm curious to ask all of you, where are you joining from? So if you would like to write in the chat, where are you connecting from? It would be nice. Me and my colleagues, we are joining from Belgium, Brussels. So yeah, also speakers, if you want to share, and people connected, yeah, we will read your provenience. So there is another person from Brussels. Yeah, very great. From Germany, Freiburg. Another person from Belgium, from Ostend, so from the sea. Vienna, Brussels, okay, very nice. Stuttgart, Germany, a lot of people from Germany and Belgium, Greece, sunny Greece. Okay, if you want to continue sharing, yeah, I will in the meantime go on with the introduction of a two-day webinar, going with the agenda. So we are now during the introduction, and we will start after with some presentation. The first one will be of Federico Mascolo, focusing on the NECPs. So we will give an overview on what they are and why now it's time to make them better. After that, we will have two presentations from two persons coming from the consortium of REDI4Heat. So Andrea and Don Nicone, giving an overview on the heating and cooling technologies on NECPs, focusing specifically on the target countries of REDI4Heat, and then a presentation of Marek Tobiacelli on the main barriers that we have identified during the work of our project. We will have a 5-minute break, and after that, two presentations of two persons coming from outside the consortium. So one from Weidberger, on the impact of a ban of fossil fuels, fossil heating technologies on climate mitigation and rest targets, and the last one of Christoph Femeter on specifically on the plans of Austria with a focus on bioenergy. After that, we will go on with a panel discussion and with the closing of the event. So just some quick information on the technical aspect. With Teams webinar, unfortunately, the audience cannot switch on the camera or mic. But if you are, if you want to write some question on the chat, feel free to do it. I just would suggest you to indicate the name of the speakers that you would like to refer the question. So we will take care of that, and we'll and we will ask it during the panel discussion. Just to give you a very quick intro about the project. So as mentioned before, this event is organized in the framework of REDI4Heat, is funded under the LIFE program, officially started in October 2022. So we are now in the half of the project because it will run for 3 years in total. The aim is of supporting the implementation of the RED provision on heating and cooling and assist member states and local authorities in that process. How are we going to do that? Well, by providing a better understanding of the shortcoming in the current strategies and proposing a set of recommendations to address them, including, for example, strategic policy priority, policy adoption scenarios, best practices. This action will be complemented as well on the development of some tools, so acknowledge sharing platform that is currently in preparation. And as well, we are going to organize some capacity building events in the 5 target member states of the project. Because REDI4Heat has this aim of support implementation of RED provision, one of the starting points of our work was precisely to study and evaluate the NECPs submitted by the EU countries at the end of 2019. as they must serve as an essential strategic instrument with the objective of diminishing the reliance on fossil fuels, and as well to facilitate a rapid and just transition toward the clean economy of the future. So despite this, it's of critical importance that member states respect and do not underscore them. However, we have seen that the NECPs are significantly inadequate for their intended purpose. So they necessitated to be strengthened, increase the comprehensiveness, and a robust foundation rooted in data and the participatory process. In light of this concern, this event aims actually to highlight our assessment of the NECPs, showcase our finding and the identified barriers in the implementation of the heating and cooling measures, and as well to shed light on the effective strategies and the potential solution to overcome these barriers, giving valuable insights and foster dialogue for a more robust, we can say, and impactful climate action. But yeah, I will be short and I will proceed with the first speaker introduction. So here we have Federico Mascolo, which is NECP Policy Coordinator at Climate Action Network Europe, that he joined in 2020. He's part as well of the project Life Together for 1.5, composed of 14 climate and environment NGOs and based in 13 European countries, working together to push governments to accelerate climate action at the national level. So Federico, if you want to take control of the presentation, yeah, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Francesca, for the introduction. Thanks everyone for being here and for the invitation as well. Are slides changing? Yes, I think so. That's perfect. So yeah, today I was asked to provide, let's say, a quick explainer of NECPs, let's say, which is what I'll be trying to do today in 15 minutes or so. I will, of course, just scratch the surface, but we'll give it a try. So in the next 15 minutes, I thought I would focus on two main elements. The first one being an introduction of the NECPs, but also of the ongoing NECP update process. So a little bit what it is, what's going on, and why it matters, why it's important. And then during the second part of my presentation, I would provide more of an overview of the current draft NECP updates, because now we have a majority of them, and we have tried to assess and look into what's in there. And also understand, I mean, where are the main shortcomings and what we would need instead. So those are the two main, I would say, blocks of the presentation. Before we start, Francesca already basically said it all. But just to quickly repeat, I'm representing today the Life Together 1.5 project. We are climate and environment NGOs based in 13 European countries, working together to accelerate national climate action across the EU. But I am also, of course, representing Climate Action Network Europe, that is Europe's leading NGO coalition fighting climate change. We are over 200 member organizations active in over 40 European countries. As I was saying, as Francesca was mentioning before, the Life Together 1.5 project focuses on national climate and energy action. And of course, national and climate energy action in this particular period of time means national energy and climate plans, and that's the reason why I'm here today. Let's start with the acronyms, as maybe not all of the audience may be familiar with it. Let's get them out of the way to begin with. So NECP stands for National Energy and Climate Plan. They were, let's say, introduced once the governance regulation was adopted in 2018. The full name of the regulation is Regulation on the Governance of the Energy Union and Climate Action. And And what are they essentially? These are the place where member states are supposed to lay out their plans on how they will address the 5 dimensions of the energy union, which are decarbonization, energy efficiency, energy security, reception innovation, and internal energy market. For us as climate NGOs, of course, the main points of interest are the decarbonization and the energy efficiency dimensions. Why are they different from any other plan? Why do they matter? Why we think they are important? Because they're about integrated planning. So they're about putting climate and energy policies, and beyond that, actually, just transition aspects, financial aspects, and so on, together in one single spot, in one single place. So basically, in their NECPs, member states need to lay down climate and energy targets, the policies and measures that they're planning to achieve them, with a clear evaluation also of the impacts of those policies and measures, the financing needs and the funding sources. So basically, how much money is required to implement those measures, and where it will come from, and a lot of other different aspects. I'm not focused. I mean, I don't really have the time to focus on all of them today, but the NECPs are also about subsidies, they're also about adaptation, they're also about just transition elements. There's much in there, much more in there. And so just to repeat that, because this is an integrated planning, right, where things are put together in one single place, we believe there could really be a key planning tool, but also an implementation tool to turn the EU Green Deal into practice, essentially, and where possible to also go beyond the EU ambition levels. So yeah, that was what, generally speaking, the NECPs are about. What about heating and cooling, which of course is one of the main elements of this chat we're having today. I'm no heating and cooling expert, and I also acknowledge that there will be much more experienced people speaking about it later. I just thought to provide, let's say, an overview of what's in the NECPs for heating and cooling, essentially, right? What are the main entry points? The first one is the 2030 renewable sectoral targets and trajectories. So it's not just about targets to 2030, it's also about the trajectory to get there. In the NECPs, member states are supposed to include the estimated trajectories for the sectoral share of renewable energy in final energy consumption until 2030, also in heating and cooling. So the sectoral target for heating and cooling, and where applicable, also other national trajectories and objectives. This means, for instance, the shares of renewables in district heating, or renewables used in buildings, and so on. So other, let's say, other targets that are set at the national level and that should be integrated as part of the plan. So first entry point is the sectoral target for heating and cooling. So it's about targets. The second one is the policies and measures where about heating and cooling, I would say, or heating and cooling policies and measures, if I can rephrase this in a better way. Because it's not just about, so of course by that I mean the policies and measures to achieve the renewables target for heating and cooling, but it's not just about that. It's also about the policies and measures to decarbonize the building sector, which is part of the effort sharing contributions. So it's a climate target, decreasing emissions in that sector. And there could also be heating and cooling policies and measures to achieve, of course, the national energy efficiency contribution that each member state is supposed to provide. And this includes, among other things, also the long-term renovation strategies, which the Commission says should be updated in line with the new NECP as well. This was part of the recommendations, but I'll get there in a minute. Right. So we've looked into roughly what the NECPs are about, what's in them for heating and cooling. And now I want to kind of recap the timeline. So the timeline we're talking about here. So the first NECPs were drafted and submitted between 2018 and 2019. Some laggards submitted in 2020. And now they're being updated because the law says it. You know, the Article 14 says that the final plans should be updated by June 2024. And this is something I would like to stress in order to reflect increased ambition. So there is no possibility, I mean, there is no option in which member states don't improve their NECPs, so don't make them more ambitious. And I also wanted to stress the fact that the current update that is going on now is absolutely crucial. Not just because we think NECPs can be an important tool, but also because really they were drafted in a completely different world, which I know it's just 5 years ago, but we're really talking about what seems a million years. They were drafted and approved before the Green Deal was even published or announced, the drafts at least. It was before the COVID pandemic, and therefore before the Recovery and Resilience Facility. It was before the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis and the REPowerEU, and before all the policy discussions that have been going on related to the Fit for 55 in the last 4 or 5 years. So this update is particularly crucial because the existing NECPs, so the ones that are currently into force, are actually obsolete, and we really need much more ambition, not just to achieve a 1.5 compatible trajectory, but really to put them at speed with everything that's been happening in the last 5 years at the European Union level. This is quickly the timeline of the current update process. The draft NECP updates were supposed, let's say, to be submitted by June last year. The Commission has published on the 18th of December, if I'm not mistaken, of last year, country-specific recommendations for each of those countries that had submitted the plans, which member states have to take into account in the final NECP updates, which are to be submitted this June, so in more or less 3 months' time. And we are that red dot in the middle of the timeline. So that was the theory. In practice, with this draft update process, many of the draft updates were actually submitted in the autumn, let's say, in the second half of 2023. Then the Commission published its assessment, covering only 21 member states. At the moment, the draft plans that have been assessed by the Commission are 24 out of 27. 3 of them are missing. Austria has not submitted a plan yet. Poland has submitted a very, very preliminary version. Yeah, I mean, we can go into details, but should be okay. And Bulgaria has just submitted its NECP at the end of February, so less than a month ago, which means that the Commission has not been able to assess it yet or publish its assessment yet. What is the outcome of the Commission's assessment? Essentially, that we are still very far from the required level of ambition. As I was saying, not just to meet a 1.5 compatible trajectory, but really the basic EU 2030 targets, which for us are not the ceiling, but the floor. And this is quickly an overview of the situation. These dots basically show whether or not each country has met these 4 targets. There are notably 2 climate targets. One is related to the effort sharing sectors. The effort sharing regulation has a national binding target for each member state to respect. Similar thing goes for LULUCF. Perhaps what is most interesting for the audience today is the energy contributions. These are not binding national targets. Of course, there is a EU-wide 2030 target that each national, each member state has to contribute to. And the Commission has published the formula and roughly the expectation that it has of the contribution of each of the member states. And what we can see is that clearly only 7 out of 24 are in line with the Commission's expectations. And 4 out of 24 are in line with the energy efficiency contributions expectations. So really far too few. Of course, not all member states are equally distant from the targets that they have to meet, but still it's a simplification, but still the picture looks quite gloomy. Also, if you look at the cumulative targets, the Commission assessment clearly says that there is a clear need for extra efforts from member states to complement EU actions with sufficient policies to close the gap. I will not go through all these numbers, but you will see that basically none. So the overall emission reduction target, the effort sharing sector's climate target, the LULUCF sector climate target, the renewables target, and the energy efficiency target, none of them at the moment is met with the current draft NECP updates. I will notably emphasize that the energy efficiency target, we're not even halfway there. So really a lot of work to do on that specifically. I would say when it comes to renewables, it's the less terrible. Let's put it that way. And this is, of course, assuming that everything that is written, so all the targets that are written in the NECPs will actually be implemented perfectly by 2030, right? Because it's not just about putting targets on a piece of paper, it's also about implementing them and finding a way to implement them and achieve them. So as I was mentioning in the beginning, we have targets, but we also have the policies and measures to achieve those targets in the NECPs. And those policies and measures still need a lot of improvement. I will not go through all the details because I'm realizing I'm already kind of running out of time. But I think this is important to understand. The current policies and measures that are present in the plans. I mean, of course, here I had to generalize because it's not true for all the NECPs, but in general, at least one of the following points is true for at least one of the NECPs. In several occasions, policies and measures that are set in the plans are insufficient to meet the targets. So their cumulative impact is not enough to meet certain climate or energy targets. Some of them need broader scopes and better planning. You know, of course, they could be improved and refined. That is the case for all of them, really. But then I would say what's also interesting is that the funding needs of each policy and measure are very rarely addressed properly. This means that basically we don't know how much money would be needed to implement a given policy and measure and where it will come from, and if any, if there is an investment gap that needs to be filled via public or private finance. And also, last thing that I would like to say is that NECPs are about integrated planning, but in practice, the integration of other planning instruments into the NECPs, for instance, the just transition plans, for instance, the recovery and resilience plans, tends to be quite poor overall. And again, this is not me saying it, it's the European Commission. When it comes to heating and cooling, I will just say that when it comes to the targets, only 50% of the drafts include 2030 targets and projections that are in line with the binding increase of the renewables sharing heating and cooling. So half of them. And only a few of them have sub-targets for district heating for buildings or for the renewables shares in industry. Again, this is not me. This is the European Commission's assessment. Heat pumps are highlighted in several plans as the main contribution to increase the renewables share in heating and cooling, but how this will happen in practice is a bit missing. Long-term renovation strategies haven't really been taken into account by member states, while the Commission was calling for an update of those in line with the NECP update as well. And then as a final point, yes, this is a quote from the Commission's assessment. Member states need to provide a clear description of and quantitative estimation of building-related policies and measures. So as you can see, also on the heating and cooling side, there is vast margin of improvement. To recap and conclude, we're now in the process of revising the existing NECPs. The process ends in June 2024, so in 3 months' time. We have drafts of what those final updates will look like. And at the moment, the current drafts are insufficient to meet any of the EU 2030 targets. They need substantial improvement when it comes to policies and measures, securing clear funding, and this is true also for heating and cooling. There are some risks of backtracking and bottlenecks also compared to previous plans. This is something I've not mentioned, but there is some backtracking on coal, terrible work on fossil fuel subsidies, and so on. And I've realized I've depicted a gloomy picture until now. So if we had to look at the bright side, I would say 2 things. First, that there are some improvements compared to the previous NECPs, though they're vastly insufficient, but these NECPs are better than the ones of 2018-19. And there is still time to make them better until June. So this is why I was saying that now, I mean, the title of the presentation said now is the time to make them better. This is what we're pushing for at CAN Europe and together with the LIFE consortium, together for 1.5. And so, yes, that is, I think, what I will leave you with. These are the main things that we're trying to push for: higher climate ambition, higher climate targets and energy contributions that go beyond the minimum requirements, better policies and measures, a phase out of fossil fuels as soon as possible, the phase out of fossil fuel subsidies as well, and improvement of the measures related to energy poverty and just transition. I think that's it for now. Thanks a lot. And if you would like to get in touch, yeah, I will leave at the end of the slides my contact. And for any materials related to NECPs, you can look on the Together 1.5 website. There's lots of stuff. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Federico. Indeed, you have stressed a lot of very important points, especially, yeah, it's important that the updates of the NECPs will follow the time because everything is changing so fast that, yeah, it's really important that we follow the speed. And yeah, the difficulties to reach the targets, we really need policy measures to be sufficient and to be improved to improve the work of member states. And yeah, we really hope there is a lot to do, but yeah, really hope both at the political level and the practical level this will change. But thank you. If anyone will have a question for Federico, you can start writing in the chat. In the meantime, we can go on with the next speaker, which is Andrei Niconandone. Is part of the consortium of REDI4Heat Project. He's a junior market intelligence and business development officer at Bioenergy Europe, the voice of European bioenergy. as alumnus of Lancaster University, graduated in business and management, Andrei combines his business acumen with a passion for sustainability to drive strategic initiatives. With a keen understanding of market dynamics, he's committed to promoting bioenergy along with the other renewable energy technologies and making a meaningful impact in the renewable energy landscape. So Andrei, if you want to take control of the presentation, you can go on.
Thank you, Francesca. So yeah, as Francesca already introduced me, I am a Junior Market Intelligence and Business Development Officer for Bioenergy Europe, which is the voice of European bioenergy. We are a non-profit, Brussels-based international organization that brings together other associations, companies, and academia, as well as research institutes from all across Europe. So in today's presentation, I will mostly focus on heating and cooling technologies in the NECPs, with a specific focus on the REDI4Heat partner countries. So with all of that being said, let us proceed. I think the slides are moving, if I'm not mistaken. So you should all be able to see. All right. So first and foremost, I would like to basically go a step further back into the past, and Federico already mentioned. Prior to the NECPs, we had the NREAPs, which were basically a much, let's say, a simplified version of the NECPs, which didn't really focus on specific sectors, but rather just provided an overall renewable targets and renewable mixes for each member state. So in this in figure 1 on this slide, we can see the 2020 overall renewable energy sources targets, as well as the NREAP targets with the orange bars. At EU level, the share of in the final energy consumption was about 22.1%, which exceeded the NREAP target of 20%. And as it can also be seen from the chart, there was only one member state that failed to achieve the fixed 23% contribution, which was France, if I'm not, yeah. With 19.1% reached in 2020. Moving on from the NREAPs, we then had the NECPs, which basically, as Federico already gave a very good explanation of, set targets for renewable. They set the renewable targets for 2030 at member states, and basically also provided sectoral, more specific sectoral projections in terms of renewable transport, electricity, and heating and cooling. And as you can see on this in this figure, we have the 2020 overall renewable energy sources and the 2030 NECP targets. The NECP targets being marked with the orange bars. We can see that for some countries, that the targets are a lot more ambitious than others, and because of that, we can also see they're already achieved renewable energy sources levels, which at the end of the day just goes to show that some countries might have a lot of an easier time reaching their targets than others. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. Moving on, as I mentioned, the NECPs set sectoral objectives, but for the sake of this project and this presentation, we will mostly be looking at the heating and cooling targets, which can be seen in figure 3 on the screen right now. For some member states, they have already reached their 2030 targets, and we can namely note Latvia, Croatia, and Slovakia in this figure right there. Others are really close to reaching them, but not quite there yet. And there are also some member states marked with a 0% in the graph This is not because they didn't provide any kind of input, let's say, in their heating and cooling trajectories, but rather that they provided a more qualitative evolution rather than, let's say, a quantitative one, which we could put in this graph. And as you can see, we have Spain, Greece, and Austria in there. Moving on, what I would like to touch base on is the support schemes for heating and cooling. Basically, the already existing support schemes for the 2019 NECPs focused on a wide range of technologies, but most of them were going towards heat production from biomass and other, let's say, mainstream supported technologies, mainly air-to-air, geothermal and hydrothermal heat pumps, and solar thermal systems. Member states also focused a lot on energy efficiency and conservation measures through these support schemes, but they were also promoting new, let's say, heating and cooling technologies where possible. Moving on, as we found out, shocking as it might be, renewable energy sources in heating and cooling were mostly biomass, given that in 2018 the share of the renewable energy sources in heating and cooling was mostly biomass in many EU countries. But with this being said, the potential of other heating and cooling, renewable heating and cooling technologies remains largely untapped to this day. But this is only, let's say, mainly because the renewable heating and cooling sector has seen a lot fewer support schemes being implemented by member states compared to, let's say, the renewable electricity sector, with member states mainly supporting investment through loans or subsidies. And with this being said, I think now that I would have mostly touched on everything I wanted to really talk about. So I will, if you guys have any questions or would like to get in touch with me, please feel free to reach out at my email address below, or just write in the chat, and I will pass on to Marek, rather to Franziska, back to
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much. Yeah, maybe we will have more time also to discuss and see why some of member states have more ambitious targets, as you already said. And yeah, let's deep dive a little bit in what you have just presented us. Thank you very much, Andrei. We can go on with the speaker before the break. So then don't go away, because we will continue. And I'm happy to introduce you Marek Tobiacelli. Marek graduated at the Warsaw University of Technology in Poland with a master at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering of Power and Aeronautics. He continued his postgraduate studies at the Institute of Material Science at Warsaw University of Technology. He's an experienced manager with a proven track record. He has extensive experience in improving the energy efficiencies of facilities. For many years, he has been involved in complex energy efficiency retrofit projects using APC, ASCO, PPP, and hybrid financing solution. He's working now at CAPE, and he specializes in projects related to energy efficiency in industry and buildings, including our REDI4Heat projects. And as well, low to high DH project, developing methodologies for the integration of low-grade energy source into high-temperature district heating networks. So, Marek, the floor is yours. Welcome. And if you want to take control of the presentation, you will be able to. Yes, thank you.
Okay, it works. So, one of our work during REDI4Heat is analyzing barriers and to some extent focusing on district heating. So I would like to show you three barriers that I think that they are important and difficult somehow, difficult to overcome. District heating, I mean, sources connected with network. We can say it's a district heating. Of course, it could be boiler room with 3 buildings connecting, but I mean a little larger networks. So I have 5 points here. So why district heating, 3 barriers, and then some pre-assumption of RED directive, this new new version. Historically, of course, people had something to heat up the room or rooms, especially in colder climates. So I'm from Poland. Our region here is colder, so we have temperatures below 0, and sometimes, maybe not now, but in history it was 30 minus or 20 minus. It was quite normal temperature. So it was not very convenient to use boiler cold boiler in the room and feeding it with black coal or things like this. And it was the reason to start connecting buildings, organizing bigger boiler plant and buying cheaper fuel and so on. But the question is, if now when we try to go for renewable sources in district heating, what are the reasons to have these networks? Still, maybe we can say that it could be something different, and we can disperse these sources over the country without any networks or local organizations. But there are some points here. One is that it's easier if we can use it in low temperature installations, but if we have something existing, it's easier to have district heating if we would like to use high temperature or medium temperature sources. This is the one reason. Another one is that it's cheaper, safer, and the efficiency is better if we use professional service and supervision of the supply. And it's connected with the great comfort. I mean, residents, they just have the proper temperature in the facilities, and this is no need to think about it on the daily base. So one barrier that I would like to present, it's maybe you are not familiar with the systems like that, but this is why it's I would like to explain why it is the barrier that it's difficult to overcome. So the networks in colder climate works like that. We have buildings which have high temperature installations, I mean radiators in every flat. And then depending on external temperature, here you have +12 and -20, they need some specific temperature of water in the installation. So we can see that it's the supplying temperature, the maximum supplying temperature in -20 is something like 80 degrees. And then, of course, the network temperatures, the water in the network is in relation to that. So this diagram is actual diagram for Poland. So it's not a history, but it's just what our district heating enterprises use in the daily business. So for this minus temperatures, they need 130, 20, something like that. It's not very often, of course, but when we have temperatures in winter, something like minus 4 or 5 degrees or plus 4 or 5, it's an average temperature in Poland or in some neighbor countries as well. Then you need temperature in this for the radiators like 50, 60 degrees. And this is something like we have as a standard temperature in air, water, heat pumps. That's a question when we would like to implement heat pumps as renewable sources in the system like that, how to modernize it. Of course, one solution is to change installations in buildings. In Poland, we have some millions of buildings with installations like that. So it's possible, but not so fast, not so cheap. And how to organize it if you have different owners, housing cooperatives, and so on. So the other situation is that we can transform district heating sources into renewable sources with but high temperature renewable sources, or to do it partially, so we can start with some heating up or heating up the water coming from low temperature sources and use for some time the old gas or coal sources. So this is another system. And we can try to do something between, I mean, to supplement district heating substations, I mean, transforming stations in the building with low temperature heat pump. And then we can say that for some part of heating season or of the year, we can think about hot water as well. So with higher external temperatures, this part, we can use heat pump. And for this part, we can use old sources, high temperature. Here we can switch from one to another depending on the situation. So one barrier is like this, and we are working on that with district heating enterprises, how to do this effectively. Another one is about developing district heating in the countries with warmer climate. I mean, it varies for all countries somehow, but for this colder climate countries, the reason connected with here, with temperatures, with things like that in the network is important. But for warmer countries, you can say it's not so important. So maybe there are some other reasons that shows this direction to develop district heating or to keep the system like they have. And sorry, so we have some methodology that to decide if in specific area of the country like Portugal, Greece, or warmer Croatia, it's efficient to develop district heating, and it's connected with so-called heat or cooling demand density. It's being expressed in megawatt hours per hectare. Or, of course, there are some points to analyze to get this value for the specific area. It's obvious that it's something like, of course, climate, population density, available energy sources, and terrain. I mean, it's flat or not. And then there are some specific values as standard that you can say if you have the value higher than this, it's economically proper to develop district heating. If it's lower, rather not. And they are different for heating and cooling. Cooling is the cost is higher, so we have something like 400 megawatt hour per hectare for heating and for 77 for cooling. And the third one is it's coming from a little bit from the local character of district heating in all countries. Why it's local, of course, if until we have water or steam, sometimes heating networks, it has to be local. It's impossible to organize one country network for heating. But and then we have the district heating enterprises of local size. The biggest, it's not a problem. They have money or they have corporated organization and so on. But the smaller one, feeding, supplying towns like 5 to 50,000 citizens, and they don't have money to modernize the enterprise towards efficient energy system. It's because it's impossible to modernize it partly. I mean, to buy a heat pump and the next year you can buy some electrical equipment and things like that. You have to plan all the transformation towards toward renewable sources and efficient energy system at once. And then that's a question how to finance it efficiently. So depending on the country, of course, you can have some public help or public programs, and it can have we can have two directions of financing district heating transformation. One is through the programs, subsidies and things like that. And another one is just directly with bank financing. But the small enterprise is not a partner for the bank. So without the help of government, you cannot finance it. And another problem is that very often district heating meets very monothematic support programs, and it doesn't fit because they have to organize all things together, not to take one by one and apply for subvention like this. And here the last point is just to remind maybe the main direction in this RED directive but I would like to underline that they use the words like endeavor or encourage or something like this, and it's quite okay, I think, because it's in connection with this local character of district heating. Now it's even more local because earlier we have some, or we can say, standard fields like black coal or oil or gas. So it was local because of network, but standardized somehow in the meaning of field. Right now, with renewable sources, it's very local because sometimes you can use waste heat or geothermal or some, I don't know, water heat pump and some sources like that. And it is very local. You cannot say that we go in the country for waste heat for or the district heating. So that's the difference for today. It's all from me, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Marek. I see there is already a question in the chat for you, but we will see together later during the panel discussion. So yeah, it was very interesting to see also for the barriers that you indicated, the need of support from that we need for country subsidies, and also to stress the local dimension importance. We will maybe deep dive a little bit during the discussion. We are perfectly on time, so I think we all deserve a very quick break, just of 5 minutes. After that, we will have Reit with his presentation. And we can see again in 5 minutes. I will write in the chat, at 11, we can start again. See you in a while. Okay, I hope everyone had this coffee, tea, or just a breath and disconnected one moment the eyes from the laptops. But now we are ready to start again. And thank you for the first speakers who gave us their presentation. I'm very happy now to introduce our next speaker, Reit Berger. He's the head of the Energy and Climate Division at the Öko Institute in Fribourg, Germany. He's recognized expert in energy policy and energy economics. Reit's research focuses on the transformation of the heating sector, particularly in relation to policy instruments development and assessment. Reit is currently involved in projects related to municipal heat planning, district heating transformation, heat pump market expansion, and gas phase-out regulation on behalf of multiple federal ministries in Germany. He has been lecturing on energy policy at the University of Fribourg since 2017. Welcome, Reit. If you want to take control of the presentation, feel free to do it, and start whenever you want. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Francesca, for the nice introduction. And hello to everybody. I would like to report in the next 50 minutes. I would like to present on a report that we have done on behalf of the European Environmental Bureau about 2 years ago. It's a report which is called Impact of a Ban of Fossil Fuel Heating Technologies on NECPs and National Energy Dependency. This report has been, because Francesca said in her introduction that we offer a course at the Freiburg University, Energy Transitions and Policy, each year. This report has been developed in a collaboration with a couple of students of this course. So this is a typical students project. So it's not really rocket science, but we came up with some interesting figures. The report was published in 2022, and the research questions were what effect would a ban on the installation of new fossil boilers in buildings has on import dependency in the EU member states. So we discussed all the issue of import dependency. It was 22. We had the gas crisis resulting from the war in the Ukraine, and for that reason, import dependency was a main issue in the public debate and in the political debate. For that reason, we also investigated the impact of the boiler ban on the import dependency. But we also investigated, or we analyzed, the effect of such a ban on the achievement of the climate targets in the different member states and on the achievement of the renewable energy targets. And we already heard in the previous presentations about the different targets and the target template and the target architectures, and the boiler ban could have an impact on them. A boiler ban as a policy instrument or as a policy approach could assist member states in achieving these different targets with regard to the climate, greenhouse gas emissions, but also with regard to achieving the renewable energy targets, which have been defined with the NECPs. So we will concentrate now in the next couple of minutes on the climate targets and the renewable energy targets. But one step back, when I talk about the boiler ban or phase out regulations for fossil technologies in the heating sector, there are different ways or different types of regulations you could think of in order to achieve this goal to ban the use of fossil fuels in the heating sector. One option is really to implement regulations that address the technology, so the boilers. So you could think about a regulatory ban of installing fossil fuel boilers, either restricted to new buildings, and a couple of member states have implemented such policies, or also extending that to the building stock. So you could think about implementing a ban of fossil fuel boilers always when in an existing building an existing boiler is replaced and needs to be replaced in favor of a new technology. So you could put the ban on here. But you could also implement minimum product standards, as we do that with the Eco-Design Directive in Europe for heating technologies. And you could implement efficiency requirements that would indirectly ban fossil fuel technologies. That would be also possible. But you could also put the ban on the use of the fuels. So you could think about implementing a regulatory ban of using fossil fuels. And for instance, in our German building law, we have recently implemented a regulation that bans the use of fossil fuels in the heating sector with the beginning of 2045. It's far away, but it's important because everybody who takes an investment decision, maybe in the year 2035, must be aware of the fact that if the investment decision is in favor of a gas boiler, that he is not allowed to burn fossil gas anymore with the beginning of 2045. So that's also an option to ban fossil fuels. But you could also do it indirectly by implementing what we call use obligations. When you implement an obligation, like for instance in Germany, we have implemented it at the beginning in the course of 2023. We have a regulation that from 2000, it depends a bit whether you live in a large community or a small community, but in principle you're obliged, once you replace your boiler, you are obliged to have a minimum of 65% of renewables in your, and that's the question. Either you do it by heat pump, for instance, then you have a technology which ensures this minimum share, but you could also buy a biomethane product. But in the end of the day, you have to prove that 65% of the heat that you produce with your technology must be renewables or waste heat. And so it's also some kind of phase-out regulation for fossil fuels. So the message which I would like to get across is, and I think it's quite obvious, there are different ways to implement these kind of phase-out regulations. Coming now to the question, what would be the impact of a boiler ban or a phase-out regulation for natural gas, but also for oil and for coal in the heating sector? What would be the impact on achieving the climate targets? So we have the effort sharing regulation. I think Federico told about this effort sharing regulation in his presentation. The effort sharing regulation specifies binding national targets for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions for the year 2030, addressing emissions from all sectors which are not covered under the European emissions trading scheme. So we have national binding targets, in particular for the transport and the building sector. So these are the two sectors that are mainly contributing to this part, which is addressed by the effort sharing regulation. So this is a very powerful regulation, this effort sharing regulation. The national targets, and we have national binding targets, they differ between the member states, depending on the economic situation and the current emissions level in the countries. And also very important, this effort sharing regulation has been revised. It's not a directive, it's a regulation. It has been revised in last year, in 2023. And it has been revised by setting more ambitious targets. So the 2030 targets has been tightened, previously 29% to now 40%. And each member state has its specific target, and you see it here. So the blue columns are the targets from the previous effort sharing regulation, and the green columns have been added on each member state's target. So we have a couple of member states, like for instance Denmark, Finland, Sweden here, with a 50% target now for these effort sharing sectors, in particular transport and buildings. And we have other countries like Bulgaria or Romania or Croatia with rather low targets compared to the other member states. Does not mean low target doesn't mean that it is not ambitious for these countries. There's a reason behind this distribution or allocation of the overall burden to the different member states. So, and what would be, which impact would the boiler ban have on these targets? And as I said, we have done this 2 years ago, this calculation, and so we only can relate it to the former effort sharing targets from the older regulation from 2018. So the question was, what is the impact of a boiler ban on the greenhouse gas emissions in comparison to the effort sharing target? And in overall, we don't go through all the figures here, but in overall, what we calculated or what we estimated is that when we would have implemented the boiler ban in each member state in 2023, so the investigation was done in 2022, and so our starting year was 2023, then we estimated that the savings resulting from such a boiler ban would correspond to about 18% of the overall effort sharing target of all member states together, so of the European Union. Starting later, 25 would of course result in a lower target contribution, and starting very late in 2029, the target contribution, because then we only have 2029 and 2030 as years that would contribute to the effort sharing target in different member states. The contribution would be rather low. So the message from this is a boiler ban would be a rather powerful instrument to contribute or to assist member states in achieving their targets. And we can skip that. And And as I said, the impact is rather different to the different member states, and that depends, of course, or it depends on two main factors. Of course, the contribution of the impact of a boiler ban on the national greenhouse gas reduction target in the effort-sharing sectors is higher in countries with high shares of fossil boilers in the national energy mix for heating, and the countries differs. There are countries like Sweden, also the Baltic countries, using a lot of biomass. In the Scandinavian countries, already today, using a lot of heat pumps. And we have other countries, Slovakia, Poland, Croatia, for instance, with a higher share of fossil fuels in the national energy mix for heating. And in these countries, of course, the impact would be much higher. I think that's quite obvious. But of course, the impact is also higher in countries with low overall targets under the effort sharing regulation. I think that's also quite obvious. But very important, the figures that you here see are related to the targets of the former effort sharing regulation, not of the, in the meantime, tightened effort sharing regulation with higher targets for the member states. And we can do the same, a similar exercise regarding the question, what is the impact of such a boiler ban on the renewable energy targets? Because when you implement the boiler ban, many homeowners will then, of course, they need a heating system. They will then go in favor of a renewable heating system or connect to district heating, which of course also needs to somehow be supplied by renewables or by industrial waste heat. And similar here, a boiler ban would significantly contribute to achieving the renewable heating targets in all the member states, but also here, the impact of the boiler ban on the target achievement depends on two elements. Similar to the greenhouse gas emission targets, the impact on the renewable heating targets is higher in countries that currently have high shares of fossil fuel boilers in their heating mix, and is higher for countries with less ambitious renewable heating targets. Because also, and I think we have seen that also in Federico's presentation, the renewable energy targets are quite different for the different countries. Also here, depending of the status quo, we have some countries, they are used to use biomass for heating purposes for centuries now. And so they, even today, they have a high share of biomass in their heating mix. In other countries where the heating sector is still mainly dominated by fossil fuels. So last slide, let's come to the conclusions. So for us, phase-out regulations, disregarding which type of phase-out regulation you go for, but these kind of regulations for fossil boilers or fossil fuels can be very powerful instruments to achieve the climate targets in the effort-sharing sectors, but also contributing to the renewable energy targets in the heating sector. Phase-out regulations for fossil boilers or fossil fuels are directly, already today, and directly supported by several elements of the existing EU framework. So we have the effort-sharing targets, we have the renewable energy, renewable heating targets, we have the ETS2, so we have different policy angles or policy measures already in the existing framework, but they are not sufficient. So I think we need stronger stronger regulations and stronger requirements also in the European framework. And we have these nice phase-out regulation requirement or reporting requirement in the EPBD, so the Buildings Directive compromise there in Annex 2, where the member states are explicitly required to report in their national building renovation plans on, and this is a citation from this Annex 2, on policies and measures with regard to the phase out of fossil fuels in heating and cooling, with a view to a complete phase out of fossil fuel boilers by 2024. The original text or the original proposal provided by the European or suggested by the European Parliament was much stronger. So they called for a complete phase out until 2035. Typical compromise text here, but so things are moving in the right direction, yes, but, and here I totally agree with Federico, the process is rather slow. There's still a huge ambitious gap that needs to be filled by new policy measures. And this is our task for the next months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wade. Yeah, actually, it was impressive also to see in your slide like the big savings that we could have of greenhouse gases emission through the boiler ban if, would really implement it. And yeah, it would be really a great instrument to achieve the targets for the year 2030 for member states. But yeah, I see a really like a red line among all the presentation of the fact that we really need stronger regulation and responsibilities to be taken from member states. So yeah, we're really looking forward to see what will come in the future. And I will retake control of the presentation to go on with our last speaker. So I'm happy to welcome you, Christoph Femeter. He's graduated from the University of Natural Resources and Applied Life Science in Vienna with a degree Forestry and Wood Economy and from the Forestry School in Bruck an der Mur. And he has been managing director of the Austrian Biomass Association since 2011. Native of Syria, he's serving as president of Bioenergy Europe since 2022 and is active in the governing bodies of the environmental umbrella organization UWD, the Austrian Renewable Energy Umbrella Organization, EEO, and the World Biomass Association, WBA. He is also a member of the expert panel on forestry of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. So Christoph, welcome. If you want to take control of the presentation, you should see, yeah, exactly. And I will give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks a lot for the opportunity to speak in this audience. So thanks a lot for the kind introduction. I will try to handle the presentation. So, okay. So I will give you 3 main points in before I start, and also on the last slide, just to give you a little bit of overview. Bioenergy is and remains the #1 renewable energy form, also at national level and also European level. And the second point is space and district heating should have priority in the next months for the European Commission. And also, if you take a look into the NECPs, I think there is a lot to do and a lot to make better. And the third point is there is really enough biomass for space heating and district heating. And even if we do the exit of fossil fuels, we have enough biomass left for other topics in the industry, also in the bioeconomy. So first of all, I will give you a brief overview about the Austrian biomass sector. Austria has about 9 million inhabitants. We have an area of 83,000 square kilometers, 83 millions, and our forest share is about 48% of Austria. And here you see a lot of dots on our map, on our card, and these dots are the bioenergy community in Austria, and we have a big one. We have about 800 plumbers which are working on the fields of biomass boilers. We have about 300 ground stove builders in Austria. We have about 270 biogas plants, 20 biofuel producers. We have about 2,500 district heating plants. So nearly every village has a small-scale district heating plant. And we have also 170 CHP plants, and the CHP plants are really well connected to the district heating plants normally. So they provide the waste heat to the district heating plants. So we have a lot of technical suppliers in Austria, and more than 100 boiler manufacturers. We are shipping producers, and we have about 62 education and research centers which have a focus on bioenergy, forestry, and agriculture. And also we have 50 pellet producers in Austria. So this is the bioenergy community. We do about 55% of all of the renewable energy in Austria. So we are here by far the number one. Number two is water power, and then is followed by wind and photovoltaics. So we have a sales about 5.4 billion euros per year, and we provide about 30,000 jobs. And the greenhouse gas savings are about 13 million tons CO2 equivalent a year. So, and we produce about 20% of the primary energy in Austria, which is close to 250 petajoules. And this is all based, and the biggest thing is the heating, the providing of heat. So we have about 1.5 million wood heaters in Austria, and even 1 million district heating customers. They normally rely about 50% of biomass, and we will see it. It will come to 80% of biomass use in the district heating systems. So we have all over 4,000 companies which are working in the field, and we have in addition 140,000 forestry owners which sell biomass to the different customers. Here you can see just a small picture about the heat use in households in Austria. And you can see we overtake oil and gas and also oil in the last years. And now we are by far the number one heat provider in Austria. But this is the problem, 30% of our households are still use heating oil and gas. And this 35% is not the number about the amount of energy needed, is about the number of households which have fossil gas boilers or fossil oil boilers. We are a little bit sensitive when it comes to a boiler ban. I think we see in Germany how a boiler ban can fail if the communication is not really well done. So it seems that the boiler ban also included, or a lot of persons had the feeling that the boiler ban also includes bioenergy systems. And the only possibility, or the only left thing which you can do without the district heating plan would be a heating pump. So this thing caused a lot of problem in Germany. And yeah, we didn't do like this in Austria, and we had a really, we will have a really big focus on biomass boilers in the households. And this is because of three reasons. Because freezing is no election campaign. So it's really important. If you want to have the acceptance for the energy transition, you have to provide for the households feasible solutions and cheap solutions and really safe solutions to heating their homes. So if we have the tendency in the Green Deal to switch the biomass from the households to the industry, we think this would be a really, really bad idea for the acceptance for the renewable energy goals. Why? Around 61% of energy used by the households is consumed as heat. Only 28%, this is the amount, is used in form from fuel for mobility, and 11% is for electrical applications. So this means this is very sensitive for households, because 61% of the energy they need is in Central Europe, or maybe in countries where you have to heat, is related to the heating system. But you always have to think about that the amount of biomass you need for the energy transition in the households is not so much. If you see, we have here about 70 petajoules of energy in the heating in the space heating in the households area, and this is only a small part of the 250 petajoule of all renewable biomass we have in the energy system. So to protect this, to know how much biomass you need for the energy transition, and also to protect this amount of biomass for the households, I think it's a key for the success of the energy transition overall. And if it comes to all of the primary energy, it's only about 15% of the primary energy, which is the consumption from the households now in Austria. This means this is not the big amount of energy, but this is the key amount you need for the acceptance of the energy transition. What did we learn in the last years? First of all, you have the space heating, and the biomass used in the space heating has to have priority, and there is enough uses for enough biomass for all the uses. But it's really important to have a good combination of insulation, of heat pumps, of cogeneration, and of district heating, and this should be worked together. And this is really important. And when you do this like this, then you have the amount of biomass you need in these areas is not so much increasing. This need, for example, if you switch an old biomass boiler, you need half of the energy normally if you replace this with a new biomass boiler. And on the same time, you save about 90% of fine dust emissions. So this is really, really important to have a focus on this, and also CHP. CHP really fits well if it comes to district heating plants, and it really fits well together with heating pumps. You see the bars, the green bar, for example, for biomass in this picture. These are the 70 petajoules, and which we need now. And on the other side, you see this brown and dark brown bars. This is the amount of fossil fuels we have in there. And just to replace them, for example, with heating pumps in Austria, normally you save 1/3 of the energy. But this 1/3 in the energy will come in some months all together, and this can make really problems in the grid. So it's really smart also to invest in biomass CHP, which can provide the amount of electricity during these high demand seasons during the winter time. So this is what I mean, thinking the whole system together. So you saw this before. This is about the renewable energy share in the renewable targets, and you see Austria has about 37% of renewable energy share now, and we think in the NECP we will get about to reach 60%, as a 10% more as it was shown before. So this is really ambitious in the next years. We only have some years left. We do not think that this will come so fast, but the NECP is working on that. The NECP in Austria, yeah, the government draft a public version, and we have a public review. Then we did the submission to the Commission timely, and then there was a withdrawal of the draft. Yeah, so official, we have no NECP there. We have a withdrawal, and now maybe we are facing an infringement proceeding. But yeah, my calculations are based on the draft of the NECP, and yeah, we will see how this will go on. Here you can find the graph, what is planned, and which terawatt hours have to deliver from different technologies. So, and you see the black bar, this is 97 terawatt hours. This is the energy which has to be saved. Yeah, this is the fossil fuel energy we do not want to use anymore. And this is by far the biggest thing. 97 terawatt hours is the amount of energy we need to save. And then the Austrians plan to do a lot of bioenergy, water power, wind, PV, and also heating pumps. when we take a look on the graph, on the flow graph, the main issue is the fading out of fossil fuels. And if you take a little bit closer look on the bars, we see that the energy use of bioenergy was about 20% in 2021 and should be about 1/3 in 2030. And the amount of fossil fuels which are still in use should be halved from 59% to 30%. We are not sure that this can be done in this time, but by the way, this is our goal. The energy reduction target is minus 97 terawatt hours. The expansion goals for bioenergy is plus 19 terawatt hours. So this is the highest goal for all renewable energies. And in this case, bioenergy is overtaking the fossil fuels overall. So if this NECP is really coming into force and the goals are reached, so we will make more energy out of bioenergy as fossil fuels together. Yeah, we will see what happens. But we have still a gap in the National Energy and Climate Action Plan. And the problem is how to fill this gap. And yeah, there are a lot of NGOs, they are coming and say, we want more nature-based solutions. This means we want to have a higher target for the expansion of biomass in the forest, for example, or in the ground. And we say, no, we are not in favor for this assumption. We want to have more culture-based solutions. This means more technical solutions to reach our targets. We say what we need to do more in the NECP, it was the wood energy modernization program. We need a strategic pellet reserve, and we also need a focus on the winter electricity production for bioenergy. And we need a forestry renovation and a timber construction program. So these were the 4 really good points, and then very important points for us. And we also invent a principle about mobilize instead of blocking. This means go into our resources, try to make more yields, try to make more active forestry, and to make more products out of it. And if you have a gap, you can invest more in BECCS. For example, we can also make more power generation in the winter time. And we also can do more short rotation forests, which also have a good benefit for biomass accumulation on the area. So these are just, you can take a look on it later, whereas these are just the main fields where our government wants to invest. And we are still not on our limits on biomass. Normally, they calculated with about 310 petajoules in the different scenarios which will be used. And our maximum possibility to deliver in Austria is about 450 petajoule. So there is still room to do a little bit more. Yes, this was my presentation. Last 3 points again. Bioenergy is and remains the number 1. Space and district heating should have priority in the NECPs, and there is enough biomass for space and district heating. So I hope I was not too much over the time. Thanks a lot.
No, absolutely, it's perfect. Thank you very much, Christoph. It was very interesting as well to see this focus more on bioenergy and Austria. So we wanted really also to deep dive a little bit more in one member states, and we did it very, very clearly. Thank you. I think that we can now go on with the last part of our webinar, which is more focused on having a discussion all together. So if all the speakers want to switch on their camera, it would be great. I know there are some questions in the chat, but I would like maybe start with one question for Federico, just because you provide us an overview on the new NECPs as well. So I wanted to ask you, what are the actions that must be taken for having these better NECPs? And yeah, if you want to give us some inputs about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca, and thanks everyone for the interesting presentations. This is the million-dollar question, I would say. And of course, it really depends, right? Because these are national plans, it's very difficult to make specific general remarks that are valid for all of them. I mean, because very simply, the national contexts differ greatly. That said, I think it's quite clear that when it comes to filling the gaps, we're really not there, right? With the targets, and I think the first action should be to, at the very least, align the objectives and the targets with you know, what is expected and what is required from the EU. So increase the targets, the level of ambition of the targets, both for climate and energy. I've stressed particularly the gap in energy efficiency, because there I think really we would, I mean, if the current draft NECP updates were to be similar to the final ones, we really find ourselves in a I mean, we would completely fail to reach 2030 target for energy efficiency. That's one. And then I think, as I was mentioning, it's about me adding more meat to the mix. Okay, meat maybe is not the best word to use in this context, but anyways, to really add more policies and measures, and to make them better, to enlarge the scope. But also, I think what is kind of missing in many of the NECPs is a clear impact assessment of those policies and measures. So you have a given policy, but exactly to what extent that will contribute to achieving your targets is not often very clear. That's especially the case for decarbonisation measures, so those that are linked to the climate objectives. And then I think this was, the Commission was quite, I found, clear on this to all member states. A clear assessment of the investment gap, so the gap between the money you will need to implement the measures that are in the NECPs and the money that you have already allocated to them, is missing from all the plans. It's insufficient or missing from all the plans. So I think that really is a sphere where very practically there's work to do at the ministerial level. Sometimes I feel there's some disconnection between the ministries that work on these plans and the ministries that work on finances, for instance, that then have to kind of put, you know, their brains together to make it work. And then there are a few things that I've not mentioned specifically in the presentation. Maybe this is a good occasion to go through them quickly. We have seen in the current NECPs, sorry, in the draft updates that are currently being discussed, that some countries are backtracking on coal, or delaying the coal phase out, or not really mentioning coal phase updates that are in other plans, such as the territorial just transition plans or the recovery plans. And I think, I mean, they're really, the Commission should be very strong, and it's really a no-go for everyone. Fossil fuel subsidies are another instrument that really has not, I mean, another aspect that really has not received enough attention from the member states. Fossil fuels, we have international commitments to phase out fossil fuel subsidies, and the NECP template includes a section where member states are required to explain what their current directly subsidizing energy subsidies, including fossil fuels, and should really now, once they have the overview, start planning for their phase out. That's it. And then the other thing, I guess now it's too late because it's 3 months left, although we know some NECPs will be delayed, but anyways, I think it's the involvement of stakeholders, of civil society, and also regional and local authorities. We clearly have binding commitments, and I would say the vast majority of member states have not really done anything on, I mean, have not really done enough on public participation. It really means hearing what, you know, those people in the end will have to implement or support in case of civil society, the transition aren't on your boat, because if that doesn't happen, of course, you know, it's very difficult to then implement what you've planned. This is public participation. It's also, and I conclude here, multi-level dialogues with local authorities and regional authorities, because those, I mean, of course, especially when it comes to, for instance, district heating or, you know, heating and cooling plants, those authorities really have key roles to play. And it's important to understand what they need and to understand, yeah, how to work together for those. And these dialogues were even poorer than the public participation. And of course, now the drafts are almost done, but the dialogue should not end now. I think both with the general public and with specific stakeholders, the dialogue towards implementation should continue in the coming years to make sure, you know, that the implementation is effective then in the end. I would stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Federico. No, thank you very much. There are really a lot of action that could be taken. So yeah, thank you for presenting us. I see many different questions in the chat, so I will start maybe reading them. So there is some question for Marek. So from the first one is from Manolis. Thank you. How do you define the hectares in heating and cooling demand density? I guess it's not just actual heated area, but rather the area covered by city municipality. Yeah, I don't know if you can read them as well, Marek, in the chat. Otherwise, I can repeat it.
Yeah, I understand that it's about the wider team of stakeholders in district heating transformation, and that's this is in connection somehow with this what Christoph said, and I would like to underline that it's really a weak point of NECPs because they put all the effort, or almost all the effort, on electricity rather than heating, and it's partially because of this local character of district heating and cooling, and heating and cooling as well, and it's easier to plan electricity in the it seems to it's easier, maybe it's not easy, but we have one system. So, and now of course district heating is connected, or heating in the city and district heating in the city, it should be coordinated with some team of stakeholders. It depends of the organization. In some countries, it's district heating as I mean, a network or sources belongs or is managed by heating by the community, or sometimes it's separated, especially if it's a big system, it is separated. But still, normally the community has the obligation to protect the heating or cooling for the citizens. And then you have different areas in every city. Then, so we have, as I remember, we have an example from the good example from Vienna, when there is a 30 years heating and transformation into renewable sources, and it's specifically planned for some areas. I mean, sometimes it's rather based on heat pumps, sometimes it's a central heating, sometimes some other solutions, and this is the task for the city, of course. It's not for some district heating company or companies like we have very often. Could be the situation that we have factory enterprise in the city or close to the city, so some part of supply can come from this factory, and it's another point for the discussion between the city council authorities and the factory owners from management. Is that because sometimes it could be the waste heat, or sometimes could be the solution that the factory plan for their own energy distribution and heat or as an additional product. So this is the difficulty in connection with financing, as I mentioned. I mean, plans are for many years, and they are very wide, and it's really difficult to predict what could happen on the field market, for instance, or even investment market or things like that. So I think in NECPs is especially as its main document for the planning like this. It's just a general view very often, and if you look for some complex solution for supporting schemes, they are not existing as a standard. And this is for this and for that and for something in the area of heating, of course. And it's easier to say that for single family houses, we can make the supporting scheme, like if you change the boiler, coal boiler into heat pump, we can give you some money. So maybe it's easier, but if it comes to district heating, it's we need some other so simple and some obligation as well, probably. Yeah. So thank you if I answered the question. I'm not sure.
Thank you very much, Marek. And I see that Federico needs to leave us, so thank you very much for joining us, Federico. And we hope to see you soon again. And thank you for all your inputs. And
thanks. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Bye. I will go on with questions because I see several in the chat. So wait, they are asking us something for you. So I guess the fossil fuel boiler ban affects different types of fossil fuel appliances in different countries. For example, more coal in Poland and Slovakia. And what about the socioeconomic implication of such a ban? How are fossil gas boilers treated in such a scenario? I think these are quite important questions. So I don't know if you want to address maybe one or two of them. Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So the question about the socioeconomic implications. Yes, fully agreed. There are socioeconomic implications of such interventions, of such bans, because we all know the different investment costs for different renewable heating technologies. The gas boiler is the cheapest technologies, at least in Germany on the market, by far the cheapest. Heat pumps are more expensive. At least in Germany, wood pellets boilers are even more expensive. So there are implications because people that are subject to such regulations, homeowners, tenants, they somehow have to cope with the financial burden which is linked to such a policy. And for that reason, it's very, very important. And that's one of the learnings also from the discussion in Germany. Of course, we have support programs, but when you politically introduce such a policy, such a regulatory policy like a boiler ban, you always have to, at the same time, simultaneously, you have to treat it like a policy package. And this package is a combination of the intervention, of the regulatory intervention of the ban, plus support, financial support. And this also must be politically sold as a policy package. You need both elements, and you need the funding and you need the financial support, in particular addressing those households that need this support, low-income households. We often, in Germany, we have the experience, we have many support, our major support programs are open for everybody, disregarding the household income. So the incomes with the higher, the households with the higher incomes, who can easily afford it financially to invest in a heat pump, also they get money out of the support program. And other households, low-income households, often do not have the financial means to pay for the difference between the investment costs and the support. So if you have 100% investment costs and get 30% support, then you still need to cover 70% of the investment costs. And there are households out there who have problems in doing that. And for that reason, we need a discussion. How can we design support programs specifically steering the financial support to those households that require this kind of support? And of course, that leads us to the broader discussion about how do we distribute the costs of the transition in the heating sector, in the transport sector, and all the different sectors. How do we distribute, how do we allocate these costs in a fair way among the different groups in a society? And this is a question which needs to be broadly debated in a society in order to, come out with some principles about the cost distributions. And I think this is very, very important, in particular when it comes to investments in the range of 10, 20, 30,000 euros.
Thank you very much, Veit. Very clear. I see we still have 5 minutes, so maybe we can just go with the last question for Christoph, because I see some of them in the chat, maybe from Office Fianza. They are asking, can you elaborate on how Austria NECPs aims to address social barriers, or in what way have these been considered, such as affordability, accessibility, especially for households currently relying on solid fuel heating? So if you want to answer in a couple of minutes, Christoph, I know it's quite difficult to do that, but then we will go directly to the closing. Thank you for all the questions.
It's not so difficult. If you are a household and you are a low-income household, you get the boiler for free. The Austrian government pays you the boiler, 100% of the investment costs. So, but there is still the problem that normally these households, they have other problems that the heating systems. So often of them, they do not know what will happen tomorrow. In 2 weeks, there is illness, there is no employment, and there are such problems. So I think we should think about to make a little bit of a full service. So, for example, so that always the planning that we make just a small agency, for example, to cover these households and to help them and make the complete transition for them. And with free for costs. But I'm thinking that these households are not so the big problem of the whole issue. I think 80% of the households can done with normal supporting schemes. For example, in Austria, we have 75% of funding now. Why do we have this? Because Germany failed in the boiler ban. And after this heat hammer discussion in Germany, our politics say, okay, we will not touch the boiler ban. We had it in our government. They tried to do it, but after discussion, they see it will not happen on the ground. And then they decided to invest a lot of money in fundings. And now we have 75% of funding for renewable heating systems. I think this is quite high, yeah. But they think they want to give an incentive which is as fast as to have this boiler ban, and they came to the solution they need these high fundings. And for Austria, it's really a little bit. They were not. We have a green and conservative parliament now, yeah, and they are not really. Also, the Greens are not really in favor for heating of biomass, yeah. But they see if they start the calculations, the goals cannot be done in the time frame they have to see. We have only 7 years time, yeah, and therefore they need it, yeah. They in the first assumptions there was the biomass level was really lower than expected, but if they really try to deliver to their goals, they need this biomass. They need biomass CHP. They need biomass boilers. And this was the thing behind. And I think this is also the real power of the NECPs, that all the governments have to really think how the energy transition could really be done. And there was another question about the fading out of fossil fuels. Why the big reduction of fossil fuels? This is mainly about electrification in the in the car sector. So they aimed that if you use a normal car, and replace it with electric car, you have energy savings about 2/3. And the next thing is they have insulation campaign for households, which they also think that this will lead to lesser energy demand. So these are the factors why they come to so high fossil fuel reduction goals. But by the way, these are it's paper, and we will see if this happens. But the paperwork and the strategy on the paper tells us that this could be the way.
Thanks, Christoph. Wait, I see your hands up. If you want to comment,
I would like to just like to correct Christoph on one thing. In Germany, we do not have a boiler ban. Just to make that clear, we have a regulation that requires that in existing buildings, every newly installed heating system must use at least 65% renewables or unavoidable waste heat. You are still allowed to install a gas boiler plus a heat pump, as long as you achieve the 65%. Because we need to be rather, this heating hammer that you call, this is what media made out of it. We do not have a hard boiler ban. And another thing, last sentence, I'm not convinced that when we rely the whole transition in the heating sector only on public funding plus information and all the others of measures, whether we will achieve the targets. And that's for me one of the main argument why I think that these kind of regulatory interventions are necessary, but always in combination with funding in order to allow everybody who is subject to such a regulation is in principle able really to do the investments he is required to do.
Thank you.
Just one point, it was not because you have it in the law. This is how the discussion was done in Germany. All what your medias, there was big mistakes in the communication, and because you have good fundings now, yeah, for biomass boilers in Germany, they will come out. But you destroyed the market for our boiler manufacturers, for example, because of the discussion and how the political communication was done. And this was a really a big threat for all the markets. So you have nearly the fundings now, they are quite good if they came out. But in the opinion of the people, yeah, it's the communication is really, really important how to do it. And this is the thing, how to communicate about this. Also the word Heizungshammer it's really hard, yeah. But this was done in all the medias, and it was seen in the Austrian medias too. And then therefore our politicals step back and say, no, we do not want to have these discussions, yeah.
And that was a media campaign against the Green Party in Germany. It was not the policy. It was the policy. The discussion about the policy was a mean in order to launch a media campaign, certain media, not all media, of course, against the Green Party.
Maybe this is true, but also if you see about the fundings and what you plan with the fundings to reduce the fundings for the biomass bowlers, and also what was done behind. So it was not only, I think it was not only a political campaign, so it was also how the fundings would have changed. And there was I think it was a combination of things, yeah, which caused this damage, yeah.
Francesca's getting nervous. Maybe we stop it here.
Yeah, we will need a lot of more time, I think, for discussing that. But thank you all for all your inputs and comments as well. Thank you also for the audience who continued to write a lot of questions in the chat. Yeah, of course, if the speakers want to look at them as well, and in case or if people want to connect with me or connect with the speakers to continue the discussion, of course, feel free to do it. But now we are moving toward the end of the event. Thank you really very much for joining. Thank you to the speakers, really. It was very important for us to having you today with us. Please, if you want to continue following the activities of our project, REDI4Heat, you can find here all the LinkedIn, Twitter, and the website accounts where you can find us. As well as EHPA, we are usually organize a lot of webinars and workshops, so you can find all our planning for the next weeks and months on our social media as well. So feel free to check them out. The majority of the events are online, so and if you miss them, you can find, of course, the recording of them on YouTube. As well for the webinar of today. So we are going to send the presentation, the recording of the webinar, and an amazing article done by one of my colleague of the communication team with all the summary of our discussion of today. And thank you again, really, to all of you. It was it was really great to have you for 2 hours with us. And I wish you all a very happy end of continue of the day, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much to all audience and participants and speakers. Thank you. See you soon.
Goodbye.
Thank you.